Program funding for the Organic Odyssey was provided by the California Certified Organic Farmers Foundation, as well as the Transition to Organic Partnership Program. Visit their web pages or social media for all their amazing content and guidance on everything organic. Support for the Organic Odyssey is provided in part by the Grimm Family Center for Organic Production and Research at Cal Poly. For more information or to support the center, please visit organic.calpoly.edu. That's organic.calpoly.edu for the Grimm Family Center for Organic Production and Research at Cal Poly. Support for the Organic Odyssey is provided in part by AgCom Central. Visit AgCom Central on twitch.tv or youtube.com for all content ag-related. That's AgCom Central on twitch.tv or youtube.com for AgCom Central.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emery Pura, and I'm here with my co-host, Katie Cook. Welcome to the 9th episode of Season 2, Organic Odyssey, Journeying Through Sustainable Farming with Cal Poly. Today, we will be talking about wildland habitat and organic farming with Ann Baumgartner. We are joined by a great panel today. Ann, if you would like to introduce yourself and give us a little background.
Sure. Hi, I'm Ann Baumgartner with Wild Farm Alliance. We're based in Aromas, California. We have a national focus, and our mission is to promote a healthy, viable agriculture that protects and restores wild nature.
Awesome. Now we're going to introduce our panel. Katie, if you would like to go first.
Hi, my name's Katie Cook. I am a second-year agricultural communications major, and I'm from Bakersfield, California.
Thanks, Katie. And as always, I'm Matt Grieshop, the director of the Grimm Family Center for Organic Production and Research here at Cal Poly.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. So our first question is, when was the Wild Farm Alliance founded, and what is its mission and vision?
Yeah, we were founded in the year 2000. I think I mentioned earlier, we promote healthy, viable agriculture that protects and restores wild nature. That's our mission. But we have a really bold 2050 vision where we'd like to see 1 million nest boxes in purchase in U.S. agriculture, which is around 10% of U.S. farms. We'd like to see hedgerows to the moon and back, which is around 500,000 miles of living field borders, which sounds like a lot, but it's actually about the same amount that the UK used to have before industrial agriculture moved in. And we'd like to see 100,000 miles of riverine habitat restored, which is about 10% of the river frontage on US farms.
Awesome. Yeah. So I know we were talking about owl boxes earlier. What is it like a place for them to live and like?
Yeah. So Joanne and I were talking a little bit before the podcast. I was asking her if our owl boxes counted, but I had the privilege of working with some of our ag engineering students, our first year students this fall, along with our farm manager, Kelly O'Neill. And we did a project with them where we installed 4 different owl boxes. We also put in 6 hawk perches as well. We put these around our organic vegetable farm. And so to answer your question, an owl box it's essentially, it replaces like a hollow in a tree, so that in our case, we structured ours for barn owls. And the idea is you're giving a place for a mated pair to set up shop and have owlets, and then they basically go on a gopher massacre for you. And that's why we like them. So they're out there and they're hunting at night and hopefully reducing the gophers. And I guess if there's some ground squirrels out, past dusk, they might get picked up as well. But there's some really great research showing that, and Joanne, you can probably actually you might be able to give us the numbers, but it's amazing how many rodents a pair of barn owls will go through in a single year. I think it's hundreds, I believe.
Yeah, it's 3,400.
Oh yeah, that was off.
Rodents in a year, and so they also eat voles and mice and other little things.
Yeah, Yeah, and then of course the hawk perches are there so that during the daytime, red-tailed hawk and other daytime raptors and birds of prey have a place to kind of set up their hunting camp, so to speak. And so, as someone who's a pest management specialist, I get really excited about this because we're constantly battling ground squirrels as well as gophers, mice, and other rodents in our farming operation. And, we talked about food safety some earlier in this podcast series. And actually, rodents are something that when you're going through a food safety audit are looked at very carefully. And there's some really interesting work coming out of UC Davis right now showing that one approach to reducing rodents, of course, has been to just try to remove any kind of rodent habitat. But the problem with that is that rodents are really well adapted to human habitation in general. So what typically ends up happening is you end up removing all the habitat for the things that eat rodents. And so sometimes you can, there's some research suggesting that maybe you're exacerbating the problem. And then of course for us, building habitat for those predators like the owls and the hawks is a way for us to kind of push back on, when I farmed, I called them the furry tide. We had a cat for it, but so we're really happy to be part of that. But hey, Joanne, because you're our guest and you should be talking, I'm curious, what other types of nest boxes do you all promote? Do you provide plans on a website or something like that folks can download? Or what kinds of nesting boxes do you all promote?
Yeah, we have been working with growers around the Monterey Bay area, putting up a couple hundred songbird boxes, which are mainly focused on bluebirds, or at least that's the plan that we use, plan for bluebirds, and the size box they need and the entrance hole they need. We just use the Cornell Nest Watches plans, which you can get off of the internet, and we are attracting bluebirds with that box, but there's also a suite of other birds that will use it, other insectivorous birds like chickadees and ash-throated flycatchers and nuthatches and wrens. And so, and swallows, a couple kinds of swallows. So depending on where you put the nest box up, depends on who's gonna live there. And we have worked, many of those nest boxes are in vineyards, and there's some really great research that shows that bluebirds will eat leafhoppers, and leafhoppers are can carry a disease that will kill the vines. And so a lot of vineyard growers are putting out nest boxes for bluebirds. In general, songbirds are overwhelmingly feed insects to their young during the nesting season. And so it's you can't go wrong by attracting these birds. The problem a lot of growers see is that there's a few bird species that cause a lot of problems. And if they're not paying attention, they might think that all birds are bad, but it's just like insects. There's good insects and there's insects that can give you problems. With birds though, even some of the birds that cause problems, like blackbirds, say they come in big flocks and they're hungry, and a big flock can do a lot of damage. But in the spring, when they're feeding insects to their young, they can be really important in helping with pest control. So we have lots of materials on our website that both describes insectivorous birds and how to support them. We have a handout on structures for songbirds.
I was just wondering for our listeners if you would like to provide the website URL so they can access that.
Sure, it's wildfarmalliance.org.
Perfect. Thank you.
So wildfarmalliance.org. And you just taught me something when we were talking about songbirds. You put something together for me. I never thought about the shift in their diet by season, but it makes complete sense that they'd be feeding on insects a lot while they're rearing their brood or young. Because there's a lot of protein and fat in insects, whereas a lot of plant parts are much higher in carbohydrate. So I'd never thought about that, but that's really cool.
Yeah, but a lot of birds are eating insects throughout the growing season. It's just in the winter that they'll shift um, to food or plant food sources. However, there are those few birds, like not just blackbirds, but starlings and robins and turkeys, crows. They can be real problems to growers, so growers have to manage them. But we have like 600 species of wild birds in California, and a lot of them are beneficial.
Yeah. So going into our next question, what are some of the benefits for farmers for incorporating wildland habitat on their farms?
Yeah, there are so many benefits. Probably like stepping back and thinking worldwide, we have a global decline of insects and birds. But since agriculture in the continental US comprises about 60% of the landscape, we have a real opportunity to turn things around and start supporting the insects, many of them, a lot of them that are beneficial and or are not harming our crops. I think the statistic is something like 99% of the insects in our world do not harm human enterprises. And then also there's been a big decline in birds worldwide, so helping to support them and then also help farmers. But beyond that, a habitat stores carbon, so in woody biomass, like in the wood of the trees, but also in the roots. And that's a good thing. We all need to know we need to cool our planet. Habitat keeps the soil covered. And so that's good because it's holding soil in place, and that means there's not going to be erosion, the soil that farmers work so hard to create. But it also means that habitat can replace areas that would otherwise be weedy. And oftentimes weeds produce a lot of seeds. That's their nature. And there's a lot of bugs that want to eat those seeds, or a lot of pest bugs that want to eat those seeds. And so having less weedy areas means you're going to have less pests.
Yeah. Well, and I think, I can remember a few years back, there's been quite an upsurge of looking at native prairie in Iowa because of the massive erosion problems they've had from all the agricultural drain tillage and everything else. And I think it was researchers at Iowa State University that were looking at, this careful placement of, they're not really hedgerows, I guess, but perennial grasses and other things, and demonstrated that it cut erosion by 90% or more. I mean, basically, you had clean water running through versus murky, well, all the topsoil running out with the water, where they didn't put these in place. So I think that's such an incredible benefit that we need to think about. And to your point about insects, yes, absolutely. It's something like, between 1% and 2% of insects are harmful to human enterprises, either, directly to humans if they're a health problem, but then to our agricultural or structures and other things. And the vast majority are simply harmless, but so many of them are important. I mean, not only for eating the bad ones or pollinating our plants, but also for turning over dead plant parts. I mean, sort of organic matter and everything else. I mean, they really serve an important role in breaking down that material so that it can return to the soil and we can build carbon into soil systems. So yeah, it's the benefits are super myriad, and it's great to talk about them. But yeah.
All those benefits sound great. This is kind of a follow-up question to like what we just asked, but why might wild habitat be especially important for organic farmers?
Yeah, well, more recently, a lot of our work has focused on habitat that supports organisms for pest control. So as I mentioned earlier about the beneficial birds and beneficial insects, when growers support habitat that supports those organisms, they are going to be benefiting from it. So we've created a habitat assessment, a native plant tool focused on birds in California that helps growers and both conservation planners determine how best to support birds. But so depending on like the situation of the farm, where would they put the habitat, what kind of farm management could they optimize to support birds, i.e. don't use as many pesticides as an example. And then what are the native plants that best support birds? So that's really honing in on what kind of habitat for birds. But we are also working similarly. Well, we don't have a tool yet, but we have a document managing pests with predator and parasitoid habitat, where it looks at the top 10 crops in California, their key pests, and the beneficial arthropods that attack them, and then how to support those beneficials with habitat. So what we're really trying to do is help growers understand how they can support these organisms that help our to help growers grow crops and help our world function.
And there's, I mean, another benefit that I think it's hard to put, dollars on it, but if you go to a farm where, there are perennial flowering strips and hedgerows in place, there's an aesthetic to it. I mean, it's just pretty. I mean, something that we found is we've really been working to upregulate. We have some really nice riparian area right next to our organic farm here at Cal Poly, so the hedgerow thing is sort of taken care of. But we are working on really trying to get more perennial flowering mixes, some self-seeding annuals as well. And it's just beautiful. I mean, as an entomologist, I get excited because it's always buzzing with life. I mean, you walk by it and there's, 25 different species of insects just right there. And I think that's one of those benefits that we oftentimes don't think about so much. So for me, like something I like when I'm talking with organic farmers, it's like, hey, if you have that little chunk of headland or that sort of weedy mess that you can't really do anything with, I mean, it's really just a reservoir for weeds, and it's not really functioning for you. Why not, try to put some perennial flowering plants in there, or if you can, a hedgerow. And, it's just going to put a little smile on your face, when you drive the tractor by it, if nothing else. But on top of that, you'll get, you will get these other benefits. So
what is a hedgerow?
I'm glad you brought up beauty, because I think beauty really drives our lives, not just our work lives, but our personal lives. We look for beauty in so many things, and our world is kind of evolved around beauty too. I mean, bees are looking for beautiful flowers, right? And the flowers have become beautiful for those bees and for some birds. And so while it's not an economic benefit per se, it's definitely a benefit. And I too I've seen and heard farmers talk about how the hedgerows are so beautiful, and they smell good too.
Oh, yeah, and I guess another thing with hedgerows is they filter dust. They filter noise. So if you have a farm that's near a busier road or highway, they can provide those services as well, which can. So a hedgerow is just a mix of perennial plants.
Okay.
I mean, so oftentimes trees, typically maybe faster growing trees and shrubs and things
Is that
like that.
to prevent wind and stuff?
Yeah, and we used to call them windrows as well.
Yeah.
And actually we used to have a system of them all across the Midwestern part of the country, and that was one of their major functions, was to keep wind up above the crops. So they'd be spaced very intentionally to kind of provide these windbreaks, if you will, to keep the wind down. But no, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Thanks for.
Sorry,
asking
I was
that.
just
no,
wait.
There are no bad questions, just the unasked ones. So, yeah, but yeah, it's that beauty is a tangible benefit that maybe doesn't have immediate dollar signs attached to it, but it just makes everything nicer. Although I don't know, I like being in the middle of a broccoli field, so. I find that beautiful, but it's a lot more beautiful when there's a perennial border next to it, and there's flowering annuals that are interspersed with the broccoli to provide sort of this attractors from the insect community on the edge to get them to where you want them to feast on the things that are feasting on your broccoli, like the poor little aphids and diamondback moth. So I'm waxing poetic.
So, what types of habitat can growers or farmers incorporate?
Funny you should ask, since hedgerows are on the top of our list. Well, one of the things, hedgerows. Hedgerows, we like to plant, we help growers and been helping growers for many, many years put in native plant hedgerows. And so they're mostly shrubs. Sometimes there's trees in them. We like to use plants like coyote brush, which is throughout a lot of the California landscape. And coyote brush, it turns out, is really good at supporting lots of parasitoid wasps that can attack pest eggs and pest caterpillars. And it's just a great plant to have. And it's also one of those super hardy plants that no matter what. And if a grower forgets or something happens and their irrigation system breaks, that coyote brush is going to be there, whereas some of the other plants might struggle a little more. But we put other stuff like yarrow that supports minute pirate bugs, and coffeeberry that supports lacewings. California lilac is this gorgeous purple flowered shrub, and it supports syrphid flies. So I like, Matt, what you talked about, interspersing the crop actually with annuals and having these hedgerows on the edges, because the hedgerows are perennial shrubs that can support the beneficials year round. And they're like the refuge they provide food, both floral resources and also some pest insects, which is good to keep the beneficials healthy, and they provide shelter for the beneficials. And then we don't want them to, not that they will only stay in that hedgerow, but it's because they want to go out into the crop if there's pests out there, they want to feed on them. But having floral resources out in the crop, like Matt, you described, is so important, because then it really gives them even more reasons to go out into the field and really do a good job with pest control.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, some of the plants I've seen used that way are, of course, sweet alyssum, which, kind of like coyote brush, is super hardy. I mean, it's really hard to kill off sweet alyssum, but it's not weedy at the same time. But then cilantro is another great one. Dill can be another good one if you let it bolt and go to flower. Of course, I know you can also harvest a little bit of that. You wouldn't be selling it, but you could use it in your own food. But yeah, to your point, I think, to me, with our annual production system, so I'll just pick on broccoli again, the issue is, if you think about it from an insect's perspective, you've got this incredible plant community out there, these broccoli plants, right? And there's all kinds of things happening with those broccoli plants. And then we harvest it, and then we run a disc over it, and then we rip it, and then we disc it again, and then we make a new bed. And through that process, we take this sort of, living ecosystem, and we turn it into sort of a barren desert. And, those perennial assets in the environment are so incredibly important, because the insects need something to eat all the time. I mean, if you don't provide them habitat all the time, then they have to start over every crop. And so you're not going to get the benefits that you would hope to in terms of pest management, pollination, everything else. And so, yeah, it's that consistency of shelter and food that's so important, I think. But sorry, I interjected a little bit there.
Yeah, I also wanted to talk about other kinds of habitat, like not just for supporting beneficial insects, but beneficial birds. Like, for instance, if you have an apple or a walnut orchard, and you want to encourage birds, it's good to put a hedgerow on the edges of that orchard, because A hedgerow is structure. It's woody habitat. Maybe you put some trees in them, although it's not totally necessary, but it pulls birds in. And we want the kind of birds that are gonna they've evolved in or arboreal situations. They've evolved in trees to look for pests in trees. That's their job. And so codling moth is a pest of apples and walnuts, and by planting that hedgerow, you can bring in, say, woodpeckers that'll come into the orchard, especially on the edges where there's more habitat, and help reduce the codling moth. Mostly in the overwintering cycle of codling moth, when they have spun their cocoons along the bark and are there longer than in the summer, their cycles are quicker. But yeah, there's lots of research that shows that habitat in farms can draw birds in and help with pest control.
What kind of resources are available for farmers wanting to build habitats, such as like funding, training, or materials?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of funding this next couple of years coming from USDA, Natural Resources Conservation Service. They as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, were given $5 billion with a B to help growers put in conservation, and they want to spend it. They want to spend it right. They want to really help growers. So growers have to apply for that. And if the project seems like a good fit, then the NRCS not only gives funding, but they give technical support. Let me see. Other things, we have lots of materials on our website that you can download for free. Like I mentioned, this nesting structures document and our habitat assessment tool and the managing pests document, but there's many others to check out. And then we also make these really cool little 5-minute videos with farmers that talk about their practices. Maybe they're talking about how they're supporting beneficial birds with bluebird boxes, and then we'll interview the researchers to talk about how these bluebirds are eating pest insects. And so we might have close to 20 videos like that now. We also have a 10-part course on the role of birds in agriculture that you can take, and it's with 16 different experts. So it's really it's a broad spectrum of information on avian pest control. And if you're a grower that needs a grower or someone else who's applying pesticides and need to get continuing education credits, we've created a 7-hour offering that you can take these courses for free and get all these units. And we're hearing from lots of people who have taken it that it's so refreshing, because they've been used to learning about, spray calibration, which is really important. But this is pulling the audience into sustainable pest management, which Matt, I know you know a lot about, because the Department of Pesticide Regulation is that's the name for a roadmap that they're trying to take California agriculture into more of a sustainable pest management scenario. And so anyways, yeah, there's lots of stuff to check out on our website. There's also groups like resource conservation districts that can be really helpful to growers. Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation. You haven't looked at their website. They are one of the go-to organizations for pollinator information, and Point Blue Conservation Science is a really great organization too. They're focused more on birds, and both of those organizations offer a lot of support for farmers.
That's great. That's a wealth of information. And we'll endeavor to put some of those URLs in the description of this podcast so folks can just click on them. That's wonderful, though.
Yeah. So how can interested listeners learn more about, get involved with, support, or interact with your organization?
Well, going to our website, again, wildfarmalliance.org is a great way to start. You could also join our mailing list. When you do that, you'd get a monthly newsletter that would update you on kinds of things that we're doing. Like, for instance, we offer field days, like we'll be having a lots of different field days throughout the year that you can participate in. We also offer webinars, so we'll tell you about that, but we also cover topics we really care about. And so that's probably the best way to get involved.
So I was wondering, what's your favorite kind of bird? Because you've been talking about birds. I was just wondering.
Well, probably my favorite right now is a California thrasher, because they're related to a mockingbird, so they're really vocal, and they have they have a funniest call. It's somewhere between a song and like it sounds like they're a little crazy. But once you learn that, you'll always know it. And anyways, they're part of our landscape. It's so lovely to
So I have to
hear
ask.
them. Yeah.
So California thrasher. Where's the thrasher come from? Do you know? I have no idea. That's why I'm asking.
But they have a really big, long, curved beak, and I don't know why that is. I know, there's birds that have similar beaks in Hawaii, and their beaks are matched with flowers that they've evolved with. And I don't know if that's flowers here that they may have evolved with, or if it's some other reason why they have a beak like that. Yeah. I also love chickadees and woodpeckers and meadowlarks. Oh my gosh, the meadowlarks are singing right now. It's so lovely to hear them out in grasslands.
I love hummingbirds a lot, and we have a lot of those. We get those in our backyard, and believe it or not, they're pretty insectivorous as well. That's where they derive most of their protein. So they're pretty wicked sugar addicts with nectar. They have to eat all the time, but unfortunately, I guess a lot of the insects they eat, they steal from spider webs, and they also use spider webs to make their nests. But there's a pretty good video by Frank on YouTube about hummingbirds that's pretty entertaining. I learned a lot about hummingbirds from it, but that was one of my family's sort of COVID activities. We watched videos by Frank on different nature things. He does funny voices, and yeah, but they're pretty amazing. They have musical butts too. They're tail feathers. So when they part of their mating call, they rapidly decelerate and spread their tail feathers, and you can hear it. If you ever startle a hummingbird, you'll hear this little whoop, and that's the wind off their tail feathers, and it's species specific. I'm sorry, I just geeked out on
No, that's cool.
But I just we didn't have so many where I came from, and we see them here all the time, and
Nice.
they're awesome.
Well, I hope everyone enjoyed this podcast. Thank you so much, Joanne, for coming and joining us today. And I hope everyone has a great Friday. Thank you.
Program funding for the Organic Odyssey was provided by the California Certified Organic Farmers Foundation, as well as the Transition to Organic Partnership Program. The show was created by Matt Grieshop, the talent coordinator and resident organic expert, as well as Moses Mike, the faculty production lead. The guests on this episode were Ann Baumgartner and Katie Cook. The Organic Odyssey is a production of the AGC 225 class called Digital Communications in Agriculture. The student team that produced the show included Andrew Angulo, the director, hosts Amanda Kidd and Emery Pura, and the technical team, Bailey Knirk, Daniela Rodriguez-Ruiz, Delaney Browder, Katie Cook, and Sierra Fugman. The Organic Odyssey is a digital media collaboration between the Agricultural Education and Communications Department and the Grimm Family Center for Organic Production and Research at Cal Poly. These credits were read by Chelsea Ann. Thanks for listening.